I want to welcome you. My name is Brian Bork. I am with our readiness team. I am a senior technical readiness trainer here at Learn on Demand Systems. And as I mentioned, there is a staff behind the scenes who are working hard to make sure that they bring you this presentation. My goal here is to make sure that you walk out of here with a newer understanding of LTI and why to use LTI within your environment. And we're going to take a look at some things that LTI solves, and then we're going to do a demonstration of how LTI works. Now, this is not meant to be a deep dive into secret keys and or keys and secrets and API consumers and things like that. What we're going to be talking about here is how you can use a LTI to access your lab content and tie it together with your other content. So if you do have deeper questions, we want to answer those for you. So make sure to type those up and we can include those perhaps in a future webinar or into a frequently asked question. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into our presentation. We are going to be talking about launching labs using LTI. And at one point, I was considering going completely alliterative and calling it launching labs leveraging LTI, but I thought that was a little too much. So we are really talking about taking lab content that you already have. And while we're talking about that, we're going to talk about the necessity of really diving into challenge-based labs, because that's where the new LTI truly works the best. And we're going to talk about what that means as we go along as well. So we're really looking here at exploring what LTI can do for us. And LTI is an industry standard. It's something that's out there. There's lots of stuff that uses it. So let's get right in here and talk about what it means. So before we get started, we should really take a look at our agenda. We're going to talk about three basic areas or topics. We're going to talk about how to resolve the confusion of lab launching and access control. You may have content that you have developed, or you may want to develop content yourself and then be able to deliver it. That's no problem, except how do you get between the two? You don't want to create user accounts in your development environment, and when you have it in your production environment, how do you make sure it gets out to the right people? So we're going to explore that access control problem. We're going to talk about simplifying access to your lab and assessment content. In other words, we're going to talk about making this process as simple and effective as possible. And then we're going to take a look at the LTI opportunities, or the ability for you to leverage that LTI. Because if you don't really take advantage of LTI, you end up with something that looks a little bit like this. If you want to get all of your labs, all of your content, all of your materials available to your end users, your students, your attendees, whatever you're trying to deliver, it can be somewhat confusing. For example, maybe you have them log into one place in order to be able to access their courseware. You may have another place where they log in to access a lab. You may have another place where they access a self-test or a practice test for an exam, and then another place to access an exam. What if you took several of those things and put them into one place inside of Learn on Demand systems, and you get the LTI launch and lab results? All right. So how does launching labs with LTI actually benefit you? What does it gain? How does it help you? Well, you have a single sign-on to a single portal. All of your content is available to your end users, wherever they may be, based on how you have it set up. You can launch your labs quickly and easily from within that environment. And you receive the results of your successes and failures. So you can automate scoring, you can have grading be completed. Now, this all depends on your activities that you have in Learn on Demand systems, and we're going to talk about that. But it is also just as important to recognize the fact that there is the ability to be able to not just get a lab launch and see what the completion is, but also to be able to deliver successfully. All right, so let's take a quick look at what LTI is. And we have capabilities of working from Learn on Demand systems with either LTI 1.1 or LTI 1.3. Now, LTI 1.1 gives you the ability to launch your labs and get back how the student did as far as completion goes. Now, completion is just a judge of did they do certain things inside of the lab. It does not actually score or give you performance-based testing. Even if you have those results or you have that information inside of your lab interface, it does give you the ability to launch the lab and get back the completion, but it doesn't give you the actual score of what they did. Using LTI 1.3, that gives you the ability to do the lab launch and then give you the report either on a per activity or an overall score on what you're doing. All right, so you get the lab launch and detailed reporting on scoring if you have scoring inside of your lab, or just the completion information if that's what you want. LTI, by the way, I didn't specify this at the beginning, it stands for Learning Tools Interoperability. It is a standard that has been established by the IMS Global Learning Consortium, and those people are great at being able to do specifications, and then we match those specifications. So what does it take to actually get LTI access to your lab content? So if you've already got content in Learn on Demand systems, how do you actually go about putting that information in? How do you get that information, those labs, those self-paced assessments, or whatever materials you do have in Learn on Demand systems? How do you get access to those through LTI? And the answer to that question is we have a very short process for exchanging information. It is a set of keys and URLs that we need to get from you, from your LTI compatible system, or you need to get from us. And there's sort of like a little handshake that goes on. We ask you for some information and you ask us for some information, and we put those information in the various places. And once that's established, you now have you've established the tunnel. This gives you the ability to be able to create a link to your content quickly and easily. Then you will go through inside of Learn on Demand systems and identify your lab profile IDs as well. Those lab profile IDs are very easy to locate, and I'll show you where they are so that you will be able to identify them. And you can add the content to your LTI system. Now, when I say add your content, that means creating a course or setting up an assignment or whatever it is that you normally do. Now, remember that we're talking about hosting multiple things. You have to put all of those things into your LTI system, just like you would put it into any of your TMS or LMSs. Once that information is in place, you can then consume your labs by having the people click on launch, and as we'll show you in the demonstration. And then you can check on the status through grading as the reports come back from how people do in the test. Now, before I go into the demonstration, I do want to have a quick talk about the type of technology that you need to put in place in order to really make LTI, especially 1.3, work for you. And what I mean by that is that we have an entire concept of what we call challenge-based testing, um, where you, or challenge-based labs, where you want to take your technology or your subject matter, and you want to be able to test and see whether or not somebody actually knows how to do something. Um, and what you need to do is you need to put these various activities and um, uh, tests, if you will, or scripts, or whatever it is that you want to do in order to make sure that somebody knows how to do something. It might be something as simple as what we're using here, um, which is just going to be a question and answer type of thing. But it can be something as complicated as going out and creating something in Azure and testing to make sure what they did that. So it is very important that if you're going to use LTI to do things, you can use it to launch your labs, and you can see that those labs are completed. But that is a lab. If you really want to judge and take advantage of LTI, what you really want to do is you want to build challenges. You want to build activity-based assessments. You want to be able to build activities into your instructions. So we have the capability of doing that inside of Learn on Demand Systems Lab on Demand, but it's important for you to take advantage of that when you're doing your building. So enough of the public service message. Let's get right in to our demonstration. So I want to start by showing you some of the technologies that we've talked about and some of the things that we've talked about. So I mentioned that we have to have this sort of key exchange between Learn on Demand Systems and your LTI. All right. And uh, and when I say your LTI, I mean your technology that you're using. Now, in this particular example, we're going to be using Canvas. We did another one of these presentations a little while ago, and we did it completely with Moodle. And we'll probably do it again with a couple of other technologies or a couple of other products as well. But it's important to note that all of them use the same standard, but don't have the same skills or the same capabilities. For example, Canvas doesn't support some of the technologies that 1.3 really does take advantage of. For example, they don't handle the grading on per activity. So the entire concept that we're trying to present here, it's very important to remember that whatever technology you use, even if it uses the standard, doesn't always use the same technologies. So we are going to be talking here about the Canvas technology. And so you can see here that we've got a set of LTI information that's available here. And this looks like a lot of information, but it is only a couple of these are used depending on which technology you, or product you end up using. So some of these will use the JWK or JWKAS information. Others will use the URLs and URIs. There's all sorts of other things that might be used. All right. So that is the information on our side. Now, on the other side, in Canvas, we have the information right here, which is, if I edit this, you can see that we are using the information that I got from over in Lab on Demand inside of this information. And again, this is a discussion that happens with our team, our Learn on Demand Systems team. The support team can help get this set up for you. All right. And when we're working inside of here, we just have, you can see here that we've got this this URL connection here, this OpenID Connect. And if we take a look down here, you can see that the URL Connect is right there. So the information matches up between the two. All right. Now, Likewise, I mentioned that you need the profile IDs, and this is important because every single one of your labs is going to have a different ID. And if you want to find the easiest way to discover where your lab ID is, you can find it in the URL of the lab itself. It is the last 4 or 5 digits that appear right after the slash. So that is your lab profile ID. Another place to locate it is if you look down in your launch URLs, you will see that it has a LTI launch URL, and that number is the ID that you need. Now, you don't want this whole URL because that whole URL is actually used for LTI 1.1. So if you're using 1.3, you don't want the whole thing. You just need that ID. So let me show you in Canvas where we put that. If I go in here and I click on this math and geography test, which is what I'm going to be using here, and we go to more options, you will see that this activity is coming from this external tool, this key that we have here, and it is using that external tool. And then here is your launch link, and then here is your profile ID. And again, this is something that you do on your side in your LTI. You get the information from LOD and you put that information into LTI. Now, there is a new functionality that's coming in soon, and this is being developed right now as we speak, which is referred to as what is called deep linking, which gives you the capability of being able to browse through LTI through to the Learn on Demand systems, where you can actually obtain all of these profile IDs and the lab profiles that are present inside of a specific lab series. And this gives you the capability of being able to do catalogs that are quick and easy and are really, really easy to use. Now, deep linking, like I said, is in development. It is supported by the 1.3 standard and will be out soon. All right, so that's the sort of the construction process. Now, I do want to show you real quick the scoring part of this. Remember how I talked about it's important to have activities and things that you can score. So you can see here that my example here is relatively simple. I am asking some either multiple choice questions or fill in the blank questions. Now, these activities can be really, really super complicated and can have things where they submit information to a virtual machine or out to the cloud and send PowerShell out and say, does this exist, does that exist, and so on. But in this particular case, I'm filling in the blank on geography and I'm doing some basic math. And when I look at my activities here, and we do have a whole thing on a whole webinar on activities and scoring and challenge-based labs and things like that. But you can set up your activities to, again, ask simple multiple choice questions. You can do short answers with exact match or regex match. You can do the scoring, which we're doing here, which helps you with your grade. And then there's all sorts of other additional things you can do. For example, maybe you want them to not be able to retake this. They can do it once and they can't do it again. So you have the ability up here to, oops, sorry, it's in my automated activity. If you set up the on demand, you will you can ask if you allow retries. So I don't want to get bogged down in the weeds of the capability here, but I do want to let you know that you have the ability to do lots and lots of things with activities. We're going to see a very basic example here, but I want you to think about what you might want to do in order to be able to do this. So let's take a look at what this looks like from the student perspective. Once you've got this activity set up, this assignment set up inside of Canvas, what does it look like when a student takes over. Well, here is our student account, and you'll notice I'm switching between browsers because I have to log on as multiple users in order to show you the different views. And you can see here that I have the ability here to load my math and geography test in a new window. And this is essentially your launch button. So when I click on this, it is going to go find the lab profile that we mentioned earlier with the 71166. And it's going to find that lab, it's going to launch it, and it's going to give it to me in a new window. And there it goes, sends it off. Here's going to be the standard lab interface that most of you are familiar with. We've got the VM on the left side and the instructions, or in this case, the questions on the right side. Now, in my simple example here, where I'm doing geography and math, this might not be the best question and answers to go along with a virtual machine. But you could do just the questions and answers and turn it into a quiz. So you could use your lab on demand interface to create just the ability to be able to do a test. All sorts of really cool options here. But again, you could tie your questions into what's going on in the lab. For example, how many icons are on the desktop? And you would have a correct answer. So you have the capability of being able to mix and match and be able to do that. So in this particular case, I'm going to put in a answer to this question that I know is incorrect. And then I'm going to answer my math questions correctly. Maybe I'm not so good at geography, but I'm good at math. So I'm going to put this in. I have to actually be careful to get these right because some of these answers are questions. All right, and I submit. And it says, are you sure you want to submit for grading? And say yes. Now, again, you can determine, do you want to show them the results of what they did? In this particular case, I was just like, nope, this might be your final test, or this might be a quiz where you don't want them to know how well they did. They'll find out once you've graded it as an instructor or a teacher. So here we go. We have submitted that. And if I switch now to my instructor, lo and behold, my instructor has the results. I've got 4 out of 5 questions correct. Now, that is what we call per exam based grading. That is overall, how did they score? If you want to see what they got right and what they got wrong, that is per activity based scoring. And again, right now with the LTI 1.3 standard, it is the ability is there to do that, but Canvas doesn't have the technology to do that. But items like Blackboard or Moodle do have the ability to do per activity, so you see the results of that. All right, so it's time to switch back to my slides. And that was the end of our demonstration time. Let's talk about a little bit more resources that you have at your disposal at this time.